We're going to get into the agenda right now. The first one to speak for us is Ward 11 Councillor Diane Sachs, and she will represent this park in the community. So thank you, Diane.
Thank you very much, and thank you. Welcome, everybody, to my ward, the most beautiful University of Rosedale, absolutely the best ward in the city. This attack by the Ford government on the Science Centre isn't just one thing by itself. It's part of a coordinated attack by this premier and his government on science and what we learn from science. He's not just talking about moving the Science Centre, let's remember. He's talking about dramatically downsizing it, reducing the amount of science education when we need more science education. And what are some of the key things that science education teaches us should be the top priority in Ontario right now? Climate change, right? It's going to change everything, especially for young people. And this is the premier who denies climate change, who does everything against it, who called climate deniers to be their expert witnesses at the court, who've done everything that they can to prevent this province from doing what we need to do to deal with what scientists tell us is the largest issue facing us also, biodiversity collapse. So in the teeth of all of that, what does he want to do? He wants to destroy one of our beautiful heritage buildings and put housing in a floodplain in a river valley where it will flood. Does anybody here heard of Hurricane Hazel?
Yeah.
All right. What did we learn from Hurricane Hazel? Don't put housing in a river valley in a floodplain, because when the water comes, there's nowhere to go. So this is one piece of a thorough attack. The other thing we know about Ford, aside from the fact that his first instinct is always wrong, and his proposals are always bad for Toronto, pretty consistently. But we've also learned about him that if there is strong public opposition and if he gets booed in public, what happens? He backtracks again. And this is an occasion where we need to embarrass him. We need to show that the public is against him. We need to prevent him from using the destruction of a large part of the Science Centre as a loincloth for covering up his destruction of Ontario Place and privatizing our waterfront, right? Every piece of this is bad for Toronto. So we need to stand up. We need to stand up together. We need to stand up and say so, and we need to do it loudly and often. Thank you very much, everybody, and thank you so much to Flo.
It's the same thing with Discovery IT. It fell apart because it was not funded. So, this is what's going on. I was on it with the last mayoral campaign, and honest to God, it was like riding in a bucket of balls, screeching the whole way. I took videos of it. It's because of the lack of funding. And if Ontario Place gets moved, or Science Centre gets moved to Ontario Place, Doug Ford will cut funding because he'll combine them together and pretend he's giving you more money when he's actually given less money than if he was giving money to two separate sites.
Well, thank you. That's spoken with a lot of passion. And you know what? I think everybody's out here because they share that same passion. So thank you. Thank you for supporting keeping the Science Centre on Don Mills Road and for the redevelopment of the West Island of Ontario Place as well, because they are connected. And Diane made a good point about the environment. The Science Centre was constructed to last 250 years. Raymond Moriyama, the designer and architect, his commission from Premier Robarts, who happened to be a conservative, that's pretty cool, to last 250 years, and he wanted it out of concrete. That's 54 years of embedded carbon. 250 years of embedded carbon. Carbon happens to be one of the most, building materials happen to be one of the most carbon unfriendly products that we produce in the world. Kind of like beef. if we build a new science center, we're actually we're taking all that carbon out of the ground and putting it in a new building, and then we're going to release all the carbon from 54 years ago. Environmentally, it does not make any sense. And then also, as a ravine advocate first and foremost, it would leave this ugly, ugly scar on the West Don parklands. So, as we move forward, we've got, I said, full agenda. Councillor Josh Matlow from St. Paul's, a neighbor here, is here. And Josh has been a supporter right from the very start. And we certainly appreciate all his efforts.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. Let's hear it for Save Ontario Science Centre. This group has been our champions in Flemington Park and across the city, and also a shout out to Ontario Place for All, who together have been leading the efforts to push back on the Ford government's challenge to our natural environment, to our heritage, and to two beloved places that we hold dear here in the city of Toronto and for everyone across the province of Ontario. But there's a reason why we're here at Christie Pitts, isn't it? It's Flemington Park, but it's not just Flemington Park that values the Ontario Science Centre. Flemington Park has relied on the Science Centre for years for opportunities for employment, for their youth to have learning opportunities. It's a very beautiful and important cultural hub in the heart of the northern part of our city. But it's also a place that no matter if you live at Steeles, near the Humber, near the Rouge, or right here near Christie Pitts, the Ontario Science Centre is a place that we care about and we are willing to fight to protect. It's a place that my parents took me when I was a kid, where I learned so much and found a love of science and our natural environment. It's a place that I bring my 11-year-old daughter to, Molly, as well, and she's finding the same love. And it's a place that I want all of our kids to be able to go to in the future. This is being led by every neighborhood, but also every generation. You see people here who are older adults, you see kids, you see youth leading the fight. And I can tell you on behalf of so many of our colleagues at City Hall, we are with you, we support you, and we will be there every step of the way, pushing back on Doug Ford and his deceitful plan to destroy Ontario Place, to destroy our waterfront, and to remove the Ontario Science Centre from where it belongs, right in the heart of Flemington Park. Thank you.
Thank you, Josh. That was terrific. That was terrific. It's kids. We're here. It was a question that came up a number of times on social media. Why are you at Christie Pitts Park? It's nowhere near the Science Centre. And it's worth the drive or transit or the beautiful bike lane. It's separated bike lane as well. So we need to look after vulnerable road users. So we're here because we've been at the science. We've had 3 events at the Science Centre. We've been in Flemington Park. We've been in Thorncliffe Park. We've been in my community of along Riverdale Park East. We've been to East Lynn Park again on the subway and on the bike lane. But we wanted to share this. We wanted to take this show on the road because not everybody wants to travel across the city. And every community is concerned, and every community needs to have their voice heard as well. Because one thing that all the different people here share is the solidarity of the Science Centre needs to remain where it is, and let's not destroy the West Island of Ontario Place. Representing the National Association of Japanese Canadians is Lynn Deutsch, Kobayashi. So thank you, Lynn.
Thanks, everyone, for coming out on this beautiful day. I'm sure you had a few other things you could be doing. So I am Lynn Kobayashi. I'm the president of the National Association of Japanese Canadians, a Toronto chapter. And our organization was founded in 1947 here in Toronto, and we are an advocacy organization for Japanese Canadians. And we're known for negotiating the 1988 redress agreement an apology from the Canadian government. So I'm here today. I know, people are eloquently speaking about all the neighborhood issues around Ontario Place and the Science Centre, so I will leave that to others. But I'm speaking because we wish to see Raymond Moriyama's legacy preserved. And these past 2 years have seen Moriyama design structures that are important to the Japanese Canadians in Toronto at risk. The original cultural center at 123 Winford Drive, designed by Moriyama, is about to be smothered by 2 condo towers of 48 stories and 50-plus stories. So we're involved in an Ontario Land Tribunal case, which, it's been made easier for developers to, win that process to ensure that its integrity is kept. We are also involved. We were involved with the Japanese Canadian Centennial Bell at Ontario Place. So we started these negotiations about 2 years ago, and we really didn't feel. We felt that our only choice was to have it moved and not, destroyed. So there has been an arrangement. It has been dismantled to make way for a private spa. So obviously this was not our first choice. So Moriyama's life mirrors the hardships of Japanese Canadians. He and many of our families went from exile to overcome many obstacles to achieve excellence. And his story is concretely embodied in his architectural legacy, literally and figuratively. Japanese Canadians were not welcome to the city of Toronto in the 1940s. In 1942, and I hope some city councillors are listening here, Toronto banned Japanese Canadians from the city, and that's why my family ended up in Montreal when they had to move east from BC. We had we're on the verge of an apology from the Tory administration, but substantive conversation about this has yet to be come. So we're waiting for that. So the architectural community has been vocal in articulating the brilliance of Moriyama's architecture of inclusion. The Japanese Canadian community were so proud of their architect hero's Ontario Science Centre creation. Now, at the moment, the story reads from exile to excellence to erasure. Now, when Moriyama graduated from high school, his family had no money. His classmates were receiving material gifts. His dad handed him an envelope which he briefly hoped might be money, but instead it was a handwritten note in calligraphy from his dad to say to him, God's temple of eternity, into God's temple of eternity drive a nail of gold. So Moriyama has fulfilled his father's words. His oeuvre is worthy of UNESCO World Heritage designation, just like other architects. I hope the city will pursue this. I think this is great for the city. It's great for the province. Now, in addition to the concerns about moving the Science Centre, which others will and have given voice to, I ask the province to think deeply about this larger context and significance of the Ontario Science Centre. In discussing the fate of the Japanese Canadian Centennial Temple Bell, which was a gift of reconciliation from our community, fully funded by our community in 1977, we were thrown cliches about the inevitability of change. Well, the Temple Bell stood for 46 years, which is less than half of the 95 years for the lease to a private spa company. I mean, the inevitability of change. So I asked Doug Ford and the government not to let Moriyama's legacy end in erasure. It's not too late to change this unfortunate trajectory. Japanese Canadians and all people of Ontario deserve better. Thank you.
Oh, that's it. Well, thank you, Lynn. To pick up on the extraordinary design and forethought of Raymond Moriyama, when he was commissioned by Premier Robarts, it was to make a world-class institution. a world-class institution. It had to be interactive. It had to be immersive. It had to be educational. It had to produce its own exhibits. It also had to be fun. And that's why this couldn't be replicated anywhere else. It was purpose-built as a science center for all those reasons. And, you think about, well, we could retrofit a building. Whoever's been there, just take a look and use your imagination and try to figure out, how would this become a long-term care housing? I don't know. How would it work for a university? How would it work for a hospital? You see, it doesn't fit. It's an educational institution that happens to be a lot of fun. And I keep them back on that because I only have good memories. But nostalgia isn't a reason to keep something. The reason is that it's going to cost taxpayers $400 to $500 million that's unnecessary. And there isn't any reason we cannot refurbish the present building and take care of the deferred maintenance, which is less than half of the cost of building something new. So we have the environmental aspect, and then we have the cost aspect. And here's something else, is why don't we turn it into a world-class showcase for green retrofitting? A green roof, an urban farm on the roof. It's 550,000 square feet. That's a lot of roof. How about if we the systems are all brought up to 2024 and maybe even achieve LEED standards? This is all can be done. This could all be done. So besides our city councilors, our MPPs, our MPs, because the federal government has climate initiatives, we need to work this out to, let's invest in the Science Center, a full-size Science Center, keep it properly funded so we don't have a deferred maintenance backlog, and at the same time we can make it even better. No. Kristen Wong-Tam is next to speak for us, and we welcome her to Christie Pitts.
Thanks. Thank you. Thank you very much, Floyd, and welcome to all of you. It is an absolute honor to be here with you today on this particular in this particular space, because Christie Pitts has been, as many of you know, the site of many historical rallies, and I'm happy to say that we're adding this one to the roster. We have a remarkable city, but the city is remarkable largely because of the citizens and the cultural institutions that the citizens of the city have helped build. The country is one that is at the grip of where we see a crossroad. Do we want to tear things down simply because it's old? Because that's what's happening. And do we want to leave behind citizens from core decision making on assets and cultural assets that actually belong to them? The answer is absolutely no. Absolutely no. I'll tell you what we should say yes to, and I think you'll agree. We should say yes to an Ontario Science Centre that is properly funded, properly invested in, and also programmed for the future so that our generation of kids today can have the experience that you and I had when we were able to go to the Science Center, when it was funded and well run. We're in the grips of a housing crisis right now, and we have heard a lot about evictions. This is when a property owner will deliberately neglect a property to the point that they say, you know what, we can't maintain it anymore. It's too expensive. And in some ways, the Ford government is doing exactly that here, trampling on the remarkable legacy of Raymond Moriyama, one of the most esteemed Canadian architects that has ever come out of this country. And how dare he do that to the Japanese Canadian community, but also to Canadians. This is our history. And we own this, not Doug Ford exclusively. So a year ago, when he released his plan and said, oh, by the way, we're moving the Ontario Science Centre without a peep and a word to anybody else. It was never discussed during their election program and their platform, and you're just going to all accept it. Well, it's been very clear that you are not going to sit idly by. And it's been very clear because the citizens of Toronto, Ontario, are rising up and speaking out. We have seen so much loss of our culture and history in this city as we rush towards modernity. But let's think about what that means. If we don't know who we are, because we're so busy tearing things down, we won't know where we came from. And Anne Kobayashi from the National Association of Japanese Canadians just gave us a snapshot of that history that is so rich that we have, that we've been privileged to inherit. And I don't think that we can let that go without a fight. Raymond Moriyama and the community of architects and designers who led that design of the Ontario Science Centre, plus the scientists who all participated in giving that feedback, said that was the location. So despite the claims by the most corrupt government in the history of Ontario, that they have consulted you, that they've done their value assessments, they have done none of those things. None of those things. So it is going to be our fight, this generation's fight, so we can support the next generation of scientists, because that's what this is going to be about. It's not just about the preservation of our waterfront and the good work that Ontario Place for All is doing, and I want to say thank you to them for linking arms with Save the Ontario Science Centre, this particular group, because you're building a very powerful citizen coalition, a coalition that is not going to back down, that is going to stand up to corruption, and that is going to say no to Doug Ford. And yes, yes to history, yes to science, and yes to working together to build the Ontario that includes everyone. I want to conclude by saying thank you. Thank you to all of you who are here today, who are continuing this fight. I also want to say thank you to the folks behind me, but to the organizers, Save the Science Centre, Ontario Science Centre. Floyd Ruskin, as many of you know, plus all his many, many volunteers, he has been a champion for the ravines and for the trail system and for the natural ecology of Ontario for years. And it is not easy work. You don't get paid, do you? No. But you do it with your time and effort and everybody else who's ever come out with him to actually clean up the Don. He does that work because he loves our province and our city. And I want to say, not only are we working to save the Ontario Science Centre for the Moriyama family, for the Japanese Canadian community, for Ontarians, but I also want to dedicate our work here and everybody's work here to Floyd and this group of remarkable volunteers, because you've led this fight, and we're going to stand with you every step of the way until we win. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you.
Wow, that was great. You know what? I thought that was it was more than I expected, but I just have to. I don't do this alone. Jason Ash, who's standing over there, is co-chair and probably does more than I do. But I hate to admit it. So, but Jason, wave to the people. You know, Kirsten brought up the Auditor General's report, and besides the fact that the government lied about the cost of refurbishing the Science Centre, they made a really egregious mistake. They never consulted with the City of Toronto. The City of Toronto owns the land where 40% of the Science Centre sits. The other 60% is Toronto Region Conservation Authority. They never they never consulted with the GTA school boards, and we have representatives of the teachers' unions here today. They never consulted. Guess what? 25% of Ontario Science Centre attendance is school field trips. Who here has never been on a school field trip to the Science Centre, either as a kid or as a parent or as a grandparent? Never. Everyone has, right? Well, the Science Center is pretty cool, but I really got, sometimes getting on that bus with the kid with the tuna fish sandwich is a lot of fun. Or maybe it's not. The other thing that the Ford government never did was consult with the community of Flemington Park, the community of Thorncliffe Park, the nearby community of Don Mills Road and just across the ravine, and I see Jeff here, of Leaside as well. There's an entire community, like all these people that should have had at least a say. So Save Ontario Science Centre is not like the government. We look for consultation. We wanted the Minister of Infrastructure, Kinga Surma, to come. Kinga, raise your hand. Where are you? Kinga! Kinga! I guess consultation is not in the Ford playbook. So, next, because we all, Kristen also mentioned kids, and you know what? We make it really exciting. I'm going to introduce this young lady, this young woman to you. Her name is Arushi Nath, and she's the winner of the 2023 Canada-wide Science Fair. She had the second prize in European Union Young Scientist Contest. And Arushi also gave a speech at the Science Center. She was asked to give the speech at the Science Center on women and girls in science exhibition. So we could speak passionately, but I'm going to leave it to Arushi.
Thank you so much. Hello everyone, bonjour. I hope you guys are all doing well, and j'espère que vous allez tout bien. My name's Arushi, and I'm a grade 9 student from here in Toronto, and I'm a proud member of the Ontario Science Centre. My father first bought a family pass to the Ontario Science Centre when we immigrated to Canada 14 years ago. Combined with the weekend pass of the TTC, it was a great deal that allowed us to visit the Ontario Science Centre repeatedly. I remember my dad taking me to the Science Centre every week, on Saturdays and sometimes even Sundays. It felt like coming home, a safe place where I belonged. Every visit was a full-day visit. I knew all the right places to go. The planetarium for the astronomy shows, the Van de Graaff generator for the hair-raising displays, the tropical garden with all the butterflies, and my personal favorite, the kids' play area. I love meeting all the friendly Ontario Science Centre staff, wearing their white coats, always had science puzzles in their hands, and they loved interacting with children and answering all of our questions. It was the only place, the Ontario Science Centre, where asking great questions was celebrated more than just knowing the right answers. There are Ontario Science Centre memories in everyone's lives. And the Ontario Science Centre set me in the path of following my curiosity, and I developed a strong love for astronomy. Ontario Science Centre is the place where I met my first astronaut, the place where I met a Nobel Prize winner, the place where I learned about the Royal Astronomical Society of Canada, the place where I realized women can be scientists, engineers, and astronauts. It's the place I learned it's okay to be excited and passionate about science. I started creating my own science projects and presenting them in local science fairs. Each year, my project would go more complex as I learned new skills. I was able to win the top award at the Canada-wide Science Fair twice, in both 2022 and 2023, for my project on asteroid and planetary defense. This gave me the opportunity to represent Canada internationally at the 2023 European Union Contest for Young Scientists in Belgium, where I got to win the second prize. And for all of this, a huge credit goes to the Ontario Science Centre, which kept my passion for science, my curiosity, and my will to ask questions alive. Students make up 25% of the visitors to the Ontario Science Centre, but the government chose not to consult the kids, not to consult the students, not to consult the teachers, and not to consult the school boards. Every school year, I visit the Science Center, whether it's for geology class, physics class, or just a fun outing. Trips to the Science Center is what brought us together. I've attended birthday parties, slept overnight, gone on play dates, and even spoken at the Ontario Science Center. You do not destroy an intergenerational public asset to justify destroying another intergenerational asset, the Ontario Place. My heart goes out to the growing number of immigrant families moving to Canada and Toronto. Their kids need to experience what I experienced at the Ontario Science Center. We need to open up more science centers and everywhere and improve the existing ones, and not underfund them and then reduce them to half their size. We need to fund them, invest in them, because they will turn these kids and students into the future engineers, doctors, artists, and even future policymakers. The fight to save our public spaces is one worth fighting for. I'm writing letters to editors, signing petitions, meeting local and provincial policymakers, and sharing information with my classmates. I am confident we can win this fight and make the Ontario government reverse its misguided decision. I urge you all to keep protesting, and thank you for supporting the future and visions of the youth of Toronto. Thank you.
You know, if Arushi represents our next generation, I think we'll be a lot better than we are today. That was phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal, and thank you. So, you know, we all know that Ontario has an affordable, accessible, inclusive housing problem. And it was suggested by, in early April, by then mayoral candidate Anna Bailau, oh, this would be a great place to build housing. And it was picked up the week later by Doug Ford. But none of them had ever visited, never been in the community. We know that they never spoke to anybody in the community. They looked at a map and say, oh yeah, we could put housing here. Not recognizing that 60% was in a river valley. And as Toronto Region Conservation Authority said, not suitable for housing.
Let's face it, 50 years of housing talk.
Yeah.
Poverty, which is the real issue.
And so as we
Housing has done nothing to alleviate homelessness anywhere in Canada.
so
I'm sorry, but it is.
okay, we all agree. We all totally agree. But here, you know what they didn't recognize is that there's over 17,000 housing units in the Don Mills and Eglinton area already in the pipeline, with another 10,000 housing units along Eglinton, about the Golden Mile, from Winford over to through the Golden Mile. So not every cultural institution should be subject to, oh, it's a good place to build housing. I look at the ROM, which sits right at the intersection of Line 1 and Line 2. Wouldn't it be great? Why don't we put 90 stories, use the ROM building as the podium, put 90 stories on top of it? It's right on mass transit. Look, it's perfect location. Though I don't believe that the folks in Yorkville would actually appreciate that too much. But it's also a dumb idea. It's a dumb idea. And so the land isn't suitable. Here's the other thing, and they should have looked at their own Ontario line map. The Flemington Park station it will be built in the parking lot, the south parking lot. So they're getting a tiny fraction and destroying a cultural institution. And as we move on to cultural institution, I want to introduce Patricia Milne from, I just got to get it right here, Architectural Conservancy of Ontario. Patricia.
Thank you, Floyd. I'm from ACO, the Toronto branch, and we're extremely worried about our precious science center. Right now it's a listed building. It does not have heritage status. At the end of this year, under Bill 23, listed buildings are going to lose all status whatsoever, so it's extremely at risk. You know, the history of the building itself is fantastic. We've talked about Raymond Moriyama. It's amazing that he was selected for the project. There was a short list of 11 architects, and they wanted someone new that could invent a new type of museum that had never been done before in Canada, and what he came up with became a template for museums around the world. And the museum and the Science Center is so specific to its site. It was designed to interact with the site, the way the building follows the levels down from the tableland down into the valley. One of the key components of that is the pedestrian bridge, which was closed in 2022. The bridge itself was an award-winning project. Moriyama himself asked and requested and designed to have the bridge in that project so that visitors would engage with the landscape and the nature of the valley, saying that science and nature could not be separated. I'm going to talk a bit about the selection of the site itself. It wasn't happenstance. They looked at many sites around the city. Interestingly enough, I've read hundreds of pages in the last few weeks. One of the sites that they studied was the exhibition place down at the lakefront, very close to where the new site is. And this was rejected in the 60s, when there was no building down there, that it was going to be too hard to get to. They picked a site that would have the best opportunities for visitors and employment, transit, highways, pedestrian and bike trails, and this is why they selected this site. It was thoroughly vetted. When we go back to the heritage status, in 2003, the provincial government did their own study, their own heritage report on how important this building is. There is one person in the government who actually can give the building a heritage designation, and that's Michael Ford. He has the ability as the minister to designate the building. So let's get the building designated and get the building protected. Thank you.
Thank you, Patricia. Most people see the Ontario Science Centre from Don Mills Road. I happen to be fortunate, as somebody that spends a lot of time in ravines, to visit it from the other side. And you could see how much thought went into not only the building, but integrating the built form with the natural form of the ravine. There's so much of the texture of the ravine, the hillside, that was left, and we can still see it today. Mature trees that were protected so they would still be there 54 years later. They're still standing there. And the forethought to put that bridge across what turns out to be a lost creek without a name. And, that still flows through there. It's one short section where the Children's Wilderness outdoor area is the only place that creek is daylighted, where you actually see water. It flows in a storm sewer south to before it gets to the Science Center, and then once again it goes under the building in another sewer before it empties into the Don. But he incorporated this and left it there. On May 4th, now we haven't published it yet, but on May 4th, Lost Rivers Toronto will be doing a nature walk in support of the Science Center. We won't be going in. We'll be walking around the building and taking in the natural features because it's phenomenal. We did one in December. Now we're going to do one in May in the spring, and it's very popular. So it's a totally different look, and there's a lot of history that goes on there, Indigenous history as well as Black history as well. Which I'll leave that one to the walk. So we're here partnering with our friends from Ontario Place for All, and it was happenstance or a bad government decision that put Ontario Science Centre into the equation at Ontario Place. Just poor decision making and totally arbitrary to support not only developer donors, but also to support, probably in that 95-year lease is somewhere that the province has to provide another attraction. Ferris wheel and merry-go-round are attractions. our Ontario Science Centre is not an attraction. So, Doug, build a Ferris wheel in Etobicoke, please. So, I don't want it. And look what, he wanted a Ferris wheel to Portland's. Look what we've got there, a new mouth to the dawn. How do you like that? Wouldn't that be great with a giant Ferris wheel? And we're going to have affordable housing as well. I would love to put it in his backyard. Did I say backyard? I'd like to, never mind. So, for Ontario Place for All, representing Ontario Place for All, is Emi Agulu, and he's going to speak about our collaboration and the challenges to Ontario Place.
Thank you so much. Friends, neighbors, and fellow advocates, my name is Emi Agulu, and I'm a proud member of Ontario Place for All. And I stand before you today at this rally not just as a voice against the redevelopment of Ontario Place, but as a testament to the power of community. Together, we are the force of reason, passion, and dedication to the cause of preserving the very essence of public spaces that every Ontarian knows. My journey with Ontario Place for All began with a simple yet profound realization. The spaces we cherish, like Ontario Place and the Ontario Science Centre, are not just physical locations, but repositories of our shared memories, achievements, and aspirations. They are places where curiosity is sparked, where families and communities come together, and where the seeds of our future are sown in the minds of our young learners. But when I learned of the plans to transform these public treasures into something unrecognizable, something that doesn't echo the inclusivity and accessibility that defines us, I knew that I had to take a stand, not just for me, but for all of us. We, as a community, have rallied together, driven by a shared vision that the heart of Ontario is its people and the public spaces that serve them. From Flemington Park to Thorncliffe Park to Ontario Place, our message has been clear. We will not stand idly by as the spaces that we cherish are threatened. You see, Save Ontario Science Centre has been at the forefront of this movement, advocating tirelessly to keep the Science Centre in its rightful home, serving all Ontarians. Meanwhile, Ontario Place for All has scored a legal victory against the provincial government's attempts to bypass a full environmental assessment for the West Island redevelopment. But our work is far from over, I tell you. In this pivotal moment, should we just sit back as our cherished public spaces are commodified and privatized? Or do we rise as one voice, one force to safeguard the Ontario that belongs to us all? Will we let the memories and dreams forged in Ontario Place and the Ontario Science Centre be erased? Or will we fight to keep them alive for everyone now and into the future? So I call upon each of you, empowered by our shared victories and united by our common purpose, to raise your voices louder than ever. This is the moment to channel our collective energy into action. So let's now tell Premier Ford that our cities and our province deserve better. Together, we can shape the future that we envision for Ontario, a future where the Ontario Science Centre and Ontario Place remain beacons of learning, discovery, and community for all. Thank you. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you.
Thanks, Emmy, and thanks for all the supporters from Ontario Place for All. Just give me a minute. Yeah, thank you. That was terrific. It's arbitrary decisions that will wind up costing Ontario taxpayers probably over $1 billion unnecessarily. And that's something that is pretty well unacceptable to all of us. We have so many challenges in healthcare, long-term care, education, that the list goes on, that we don't need to piss away money relocating the Science Center or a total environmental disaster at Ontario Place. We had another speaker that was coming, MPP Jill Andrews from St. Paul's, just north here. Jill had an unfortunate accident last week at the Ontario Science Centre. Because the province refuses to pay to fix the bridge that connects the two buildings, they run shuttle buses. They've been running shuttle buses for 2 years. The cost is up to about $4 million now. And so Dr. Jill, getting on the shuttle bus, messed up her ankle. If that shuttle bus, the bridge had been repaired, well, the chances are she wouldn't have had that accident. So, but she sent us a statement, and I don't know if my arm's long enough. Anyway, friends, this is Dr. Jill Andrews. Friends, I'm so sorry I couldn't be with you at today's rally to save our Ontario Science Centre. While meeting with some of my fantastic St. Paul's constituents last Saturday at the Ontario Science Centre, I took a pretty nasty fall headed to the shuttles on some uneven concrete and sustained a hamstring injury. I thought it was an ankle, but it's a hamstring. Talk about irony. And she said, feel free to insert a laugh here, so please. Thank you. As I lay there on the ground, I couldn't help but think that Doug Ford should have fixed that damn bridge so he wouldn't need to take shuttle buses to the exhibitions. Yeah. I think she's a little annoyed, huh? We must continue to fight to save our Ontario Science Centre and its world-class scientific programming, its value to Ontario's culture, heritage, education, its value to the 400, we didn't touch on this, but to the 400 employees, and I know some of them are here, 400 employees of the Ontario Science Centre, and if you build a half-size OSC light at Ontario Place with 18% less exhibition space, then you probably can deduct either 50% or 18%, depending if you use the government's math or you use real math, that a lot of those people, unfortunately, will lose their positions and families will suffer. So where was it? And also to people who make to the very Thorncliffe and Flemington Park community where our Ontario Science Centre is located conveniently near to the highway for easier access. When the Eglinton Crosstown finally opens, Diane, would you have an approximation? 2030, 2040, June? I think Phil Verster's hardware is not working, more likely. But they give them a lot of money for messing it up, don't they? Well, anyway, there's a Science Center stop 200 meters from the front door. Well, that's accessible transit. The Ontario line, which is being built across the city, will have its terminus at the Flemington Park station, which is going to be, as I said earlier, built right in the parking lot, 50 meters from the front door. I go up and down the Don Valley, either walking or biking. So you can get there pretty well any way you want. Jill has it from a car 12 minutes south of the 401, right on arterial road of Don Mills Road, and not even 5 minutes from the Don Valley Parkway. But it's also accessible to people that have to walk. There's a group in Thorncliffe Park called the Thorncliffe Park Autism Support Network, and they can walk kids over there. Some of them are mobility challenged, and they can make it there because it'll probably take me 10 or 15 minutes. It takes them a lot longer. They arranged for a field trip last year to Ripley's. The school bus cost $600. This is a small community-based organization. $600 is a lot. Now, they use the Science Center frequently. It will be something out of their budget later on. So its location suits the communities as well. Oh, sorry, Jason, I lost it. So do I ad-lib here, or we want to have a cheer to save the Science Center? Oh, no, we got it back. We cannot give up the fight. There is no business case for Doug Ford's plan to move the Science Center to Ontario Place. Well, there is. It's just not worth the paper that it would have been printed on. And it's not just people like us saying that. The Ontario Auditor General Value for Money report said this is a piece of crap. Now, I kind of paraphrased the piece of crap, but you get my idea. He's like, why did you bother? And the other thing is, we waited 8 months for it. 8 months. The minister kept saying, well, we're double and triple checking. Well, doubling down, which I guess is what Doug Ford does, doesn't really work. So, here's one more interesting fact on that one. The Board of Trustees of the Ontario Science Centre, and its Board of Trustees, not Board of Directors, trustees. Now, my understanding of trustees are entrusted with both financial and operational duties. They approved unanimously the plan overnight. It took our team 5 days, 5 people, right, Kelly, to do a deep dive on it. It took the journalists longer than that. It took the Auditor General longer. How did I forgot to mention, they're all a Ford patronage appointees. Now I know how it got approved overnight. You got to know I got to add. Okay. So he's not going to tell me his password. It made it a lot easier. Doug Ford did not consult with communities, not students, parents, school boards. No one on this decision, a decision he hid during his election campaign, a decision that will waste taxpayers' dollars only to make his $650 million in counting Therm private, for-profit, Austrian luxury spa buddies richer. Doug Ford has disregarded environmental concerns and has done no environmental impact assessment at the proposed new site. In fact, Doug Ford cooked up Bill 154, New Deal for Toronto Act. Gotta love the lies that baked into these government bill titles. So his government could be above the law, disregard accountability, and plow forward with his scheme to reward his backers. So, who wants a half-size science center at double the cost at Ontario Place that might not even have science programming inside of it? Who wants to see many of the current Ontario Science Centre workers displaced and jobless? Who wants to see Ontario Science Centre ripped away from a predominantly BIPOC community that is already under-resourced? Who wants to see the Ontario Science Centre created by renowned Canadian architect Raymond Moriyama demolished? No one. No one. No one. No one. No one. I can't hear you. Kinga. Oh, she's still not here. Oh. Anyway, no one does. No one does except Doug in there. Jason and I received so many responses on social media, and they run about 400 to 1. Now, one person. So, is there no one? Yeah, there is one. But for every 400 of us, there's one out there that thinks it's a good idea. So it works from there. Yes. So let's keep the heat on. Thank you to me, Jason, the entire Save Ontario Science Centre movement, and allies for showing up today. Let's keep petition signatures coming. And I'd say one of the key features of Save Ontario Science Centre is our letter campaign. You see it on everything we do. It's on the poster. You can use the QR code. You can go to saveontariosciencecentre.com. The Premier and the Minister both get every letter in their inbox. If you live in the city of Toronto, your city council will receive a letter as well. If your MPP will receive a letter, and out of 124 ridings, 123 out of 124 ridings where people have said, and don't move that. And that comes east to west across Ontario. So if you have not signed the letter to the Premier and want to voice your opinion, please go to Save Ontario Science Center, SaveScienceCenter.com. Ontario's not in there. And sign the letter and share it with your friends. And something that actually works really well, if they live outside the city, if they live in Timmins or Kirkland Lake or Windsor or Kingston. You know, when you get stuff from outside the city, it has much more of an impact than us lefty, liberal, environmental people that care about stuff. So also, we've actually, I just want a vote here. We just found out through a Freedom of Information Act that the new Science Center will be called the Doug Ford Center for Sciencey Stuff. Okay. No, more. Well, if we can aid a stadium after, never mind. So, we want to make a lot of noise for a recording right now, right? Right, Jim?
Yeah, we're making a record.
We're making Jim. You have to, we don't make records anymore. We make recordings. So, is everybody here loud? Anybody loud? I know I am. Everybody got a whistle? So, on the count of 3.
Oh, I just want to introduce it. My name is Jim. I'm here with the Toronto Education Workers. And, we have been just last week, or earlier this week, we were dealing with Doug's budget. So with the Toronto District School Boards, one of the things they were doing was cutting the outdoor education programs and a lot of trips. So I guess that's Doug's way of slowing down traffic to make the numbers look bad at Ontario Place or the Science Center is by not funding trips to the Science Center.
Well, education is not important to our government, else we wouldn't have a minister named Mr. Lecce. So it's I always wonder about that. How you get someone who had a private school education as being a public minister of education. So we're going to get some noise, Jim.
Yeah, so we're going to play a track, and I need to have your best singing voices. It goes like this.
We won't.
We won't.
Down.
No.
We won't. Back. Down.
Come on. Let's have some noise. You. Noise.
Down.
Guys.
What? You won't. Back. Down. Louder.
Noise.
We won't.
Sit.
Show me what democracy looks like. Show me what democracy looks like. Show me what democracy looks like. Back down. We won't. Back down. We won't. Back down. Give yourselves a hand. Woo! I'm going to try to put that in Doug Ford's email.
Yeah. I got a better place for it. So we're pretty well wrapped up. I want to say thank you to Jim and to the education workers and to. Oh, let me say thank you. Education, OPSU, Brian Chang from OPSU. We're a small grassroots organization, and support from community from MPPs, from local councillors, and from people that recognize the importance of keeping the Ontario Science Centre in its present location and properly funding the long-term deferred maintenance. So thank you to all of those. Thank you to everybody that's come out here as well. We got a nice day. We've got a couple of these in the rain. This is a lot nicer. And so, but it's everybody's voice. Please, SaveScienceCenter.com. Share it with your friends. Share it with your family. Share it with your neighbors. Even share it with the guy down the street that you don't like. One more thing from Diane Sachs.
Yeah, thanks very much, everybody. For everybody from Ward 11, just 3 upcoming things I want you to know about. We have 2 environment days this spring, one May 12th at Central Tech, one's June 23rd at Fred Hamilton. Bring all your hazardous waste, electronic waste, leftover textiles, pick up free compost, and we're going to have free trees this year for the very first time. And we'll be right here having a spring spectacular in Christie Pits, the afternoon of May 26th. Hope to see you all there. Thank you.
Probably Councillor Sachs' newsletter and social media. Is that right? Okay. Well, unless somebody has something to say, I'm done. I'm done. And my friends over there know that takes a lot for me to say I'm done talking. Yeah, they're laughing over here. So thank you all for coming. Have a safe trip home and share your objections to moving the Ontario Science Centre.